Hey guys, welcome back to some more reviews. I'm Warblade Fortress 5, aka Nate Murphy, the Explorer 4 here. Welcome back to some more reviews. And I wanted to review one more franchise before October hits, because in October I plan on reviewing the Halloween franchise, which is a franchise I can't wait to review because I absolutely love the Halloween franchise. You got some really great movies in there. So I absolutely cannot wait to review the Halloween franchise, which we'll be talking about in October. But I wanted to review one more franchise for October hits, and it's a franchise that I have a lot of fun with, and that is the Wrong Turn franchise. Now, like I said, it's a franchise that I have a lot of fun with. It's a franchise that has some really good practical effects, really good special effects, really crazy death scenes, really twisted moments. Certain sequels are bad, certain sequels are decent, some sequels are amazing. The first movie I think is pretty decent. But I think overall the franchise is pretty fun. I have a lot of fun with it, and I also me and Grim Reaper did a discussion video on the Wrong Turn franchise. If you guys want to check that out, it's me and Grim Reaper talking about the Wrong Turn franchise and what we think about the sequels and all the films in general in the franchise. So if you guys want to check that out, you guys can. It's a discussion with me and Grim Reaper discussing the Wrong Turn franchise. And Wrong Turn 1, I have them all on DVD, and they're pretty cheap to pick up. They're really not that much money. I would say that I never really paid over $15 for a DVD for the Wrong Turn franchise. They were pretty cheap to buy, so I do find them on good deals. But I do own them all on DVD. I own Wrong Turn 1, which is pretty decent, which we're talking about in this movie review. So yeah, Wrong Turn 1. Wrong Turn 2, Dead End, which is my favorite and absolutely fun, crazy, off-the-wall sequel, which I love. I love the characters. I love the fact that, it is still a thriller, but they add just crazy gore and crazy twisted moments. And it's an off-the-wall film. And you have some really good, memorable death scenes. You got some really great practical effects. Joe Lynch did a good job directing the movie. Henry Rollins is awesome in the film. A lot of cool scenes. It is still kind of like a thriller because you do have them being chased in the woods, stuff like that. So it still is kind of a thriller. But I think it's a fun, very, very entertaining slasher film. It's my favorite of the franchise. You have really good gore. You still do have a thriller aspect to it. You have a score, which I really enjoy. Atmosphere, which I think is pretty good. The woods, and I thought overall, Wrong Turn 2 was definitely my favorite movie of the franchise. So your Wrong Turn 2, Dead End is my favorite. Wrong Turn 3, Left 4 Dead, the worst one in the franchise. You have horrible CGI. Very, very bad. Even when the makeup effects are there, they're not that great. You really only get one mutant. I mean, technically there's two of them until one of them gets killed off. Three Finger Sun, which, that's why I said I guess it's two mutants. But Three Finger Sun gets killed off really quickly, so it's, for the most of the movie, it's one mutant. And a bunch of CGI traps, and, the cast was very annoying. I really didn't like anybody in the film. The movie really dragged a lot. It's not fun. There's hardly any practical effects, and even the practical effects that are there aren't even that great. Declan O'Brien, who would go on to do Wrong Turn 4 and 5, and he would go on to do Joyride 3, and he did a bunch of sci-fi flicks. This is probably, from what I've seen so far, his worst film. I have not seen Joyride 3. Wrong Turn 4 is pretty decent, which we'll talk about in a second. Wrong Turn 5 is meh. But yeah, Wrong Turn 3 is the worst one. I feel like it's the one that's the most boring. It's the one that is hard to sit through. You have a horrible cast. You got pretty bad, even practical effects are pretty bad. And you have horrible CGI traps. There's only one mutant. All the cast is unlikable. And it's just a very, very crappy sequel. So yeah, Wrong Turn 3 is the worst one. Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings, is actually, it's a film that in the past I said was awesome. I don't really know if I would say it's awesome anymore. It's not flawless. It's not a classic by any means. And that's why I don't know if I'd call it awesome anymore. I don't really think it's awesome and it's so great. I mean, it's good, but I don't think it's awesome. I think it's decent. I think it's okay. I think for what it is, it's a pretty decent slasher flick. Um, you still got a little bit of CGI in there, little bit here and there, not a lot, mostly practical, but you get some shots of CGI. I really like the atmosphere, though. I enjoy the fact that it takes place in the winter, and I like the idea of taking place in an abandoned asylum. I like the death scenes, gores there, practical effects. Although I would say though, the characters in this film are stupid and dumb. That's why I think it's one of its biggest flaws. And I didn't mind the score. It wasn't really that memorable, but I don't know. It was okay, I guess. I mean, it kind of fit the movie. It kind of had this weird, not really banjo, but sort of country score to it. And pretty much Wrong Turn 2. I would say Wrong Turn 2 has the best score, and then Wrong Turn 1 would be right below that. But Wrong Turn 2 is my favorite score. But this one still has that. It's sort of a backwoods kind of score, country kind of score. It's like messed up though, and it sounds horrifying. But at least in Wrong Turn 2, here you still get that, but it's kind of weak. I didn't really remember a lot from the score, but you know, it kind of fit the movie. You know, it was there. I mean, I guess it was okay. But Wrong Turn 4, it's for what it is. It's a pretty decent slasher film. I can have fun with it. A lot of good death scenes, a lot of good practical effects, and I can have fun with Wrong Turn 4. So yeah, Wrong Turn 4 is pretty decent. Wrong Turn 5, Bloodlines. It's a very meh movie for me because for the most part it is very mediocre. Honestly, it is a very mediocre sequel. There's honestly a couple things I like. I like the practical effects. I like the death scenes. I like the idea taking place during the Mountain Man Festival. Different idea. I like the fact that you get Doug Bradley in this film, which is a great job. I like the fact that it takes place in a town. But I don't know. I can honestly just only watch it for the practical effects and the death scenes. There's really not anything else to this movie. It's not really directed that well. The atmosphere isn't even really there. I mean, the city atmosphere, it is there. But as far as the film's mood and the way that it was shot, I mean, it was kind of not even. It was kind of basic, honestly. Um, and you know, it's still. I don't remember seeing any CGI in the film. Maybe towards the beginning of the movie, a couple of the parts of CGI, but not really a lot of CGI. Doug Bradley is he does a good job in this film of playing a crazy dude. Actually, he's playing the old man character from the first two movies. This is a prequel, and I don't know. It's meh. It's not good. I can't even say it's decent. I can't even call it a guilty pleasure. I can't say it's horrible though because I really enjoy the practical effects. I really enjoy the idea of taking place in a town and also taking place during the Mountain Men Festival. And I really enjoyed Doug Bradley. I really enjoyed the death scenes. But it's meh. I don't love it. I can't even say that I thought it was decent. But it's not horrible. It's not total garbage. It's a film that I can honestly only watch the practical effects. That's honestly it. But it's very meh. I mean, I don't know. This is pretty mediocre sequel. But I can still watch for the practical effects. And Doug Bradley's in it. Does a good job. The atmosphere of the town and the idea of taking place during the Mountain Man Festival made it different. Man, Wrong Turn 5, Bloodlines, it's meh. And Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort, is a film that it's kind of disappointing. I really don't remember a lot from it. I have to rewatch it again. But I can remember being disappointed with it. And I do remember, though, it tried to be a different movie. It tried to take a different route. It tried to make the franchise different, other than just being your typical, oh, it's just people getting killed with, and it does happen. There are some really gory death scenes, but I feel like there's more of a story behind it. I really enjoyed the fact that there was a story behind it. Um, but I have to watch it again. I don't really remember a lot from Wrong Turn 6, but I do remember it being pretty disappointing. Yeah, that's Wrong Turn 6. And I'll be talking about the sequels probably later on this week. But today I'm talking about Wrong Turn 1. This film came out in 2003, get a 6.1 on IMDb. Now, the film was directed by Rob Schmidt, who had made Alphabet Killer. And the first Wrong Turn, it's one of those movies where I think it's pretty decent. It's pretty okay. I mean, I don't love the first Wrong Turn movie, only because comparing this to some of the sequels, like especially Part 2, because Part 2 is a very, very fast-paced film, and it's a very gory film that has some really good practical effects in it. Looking at this and then looking at the sequels is like looking at two different things. Even though they're both the same idea, killer hillbillies in the backwoods. Even though it is about that, killer mutant hillbillies in the woods. It's a completely different. I don't know if I would say tone, but it is different than the sequels. This one's much more of a serious, straightforward horror thriller. It's not really about the death scene. It's not about the body count. It's not about the gore. Even though you get some pretty decent gore, but compared to the sequels, I mean, it's definitely not as gory as some of the sequels. But it's not really about the practical effects and the gore. It's a different film than the other movies in the franchise. And I don't know, maybe because and it wasn't like I watched Wrong Turn 2 first or Wrong Turn 3 first. No, I watched Wrong Turn 1 on Sci-Fi. They had a 3-movie marathon on there. They had Wrong Turn, they had Wrong Turn 2, they had Wrong Turn 3. And I watched all 3 films on Sci-Fi, and even watching 2 and 3, I hated 3, but watching this and comparing it to Part 2, I would say that I enjoyed Part 2 more because it is still a thriller. It still does have the action stuff in there, but it also has really, really crazy practical effects, really crazy moments, twisted moments. It has a great idea of the Apocalypse TV show. It's a fun slasher. I have a lot of fun with Part 2. This movie, I enjoy it for being a horror thriller. I still like the film. I'm not saying that I don't like it. I really do like the film. I think it's really well made. Rob Schmidt did a good job shooting the film. It has a really good atmosphere to it. I would probably say that this one has the best cast because I really enjoyed Desmond Harrington. Or was it Desmond Harrington? Yeah, it was Desmond Harrington. Really enjoyed Desmond Harrington as Chris Flynn. Really, really likable character. Really, really good lead, as well as Eliza Dushku playing Jesse Burlingame. Once again, really strong lead, really likable lead. Both probably my favorite leads of the franchise. Like even Part 2, even though I like the cast from Part 2, I would say that Part 1 has a better cast because Desmond Harrington and Eliza Dushku did really, really good job acting wise. Really, really good performances by both of them. And it's a film that, like I said, it's more focused on the thriller part. It's more of a serious, straightforward thriller. It's not really about the practical effects. It's much more of a very serious horror film. And I feel like the film is definitely got a really, good idea of it taking place in the woods of West Virginia. And these hillbillies are back in these woods killing people. It's an idea that's pretty good. It's pretty memorable. And it, sprung off into a franchise. I mean, this movie, I know that when this movie came out, when it came out, it didn't really make money. I don't know if it bombed, but I know that when it came out, it cost $12 million, made $15 million. So it really it wasn't a big success. But it did get a franchise. I mean, you got Wrong Turn 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it got a franchise. But the first movie, like I said, it's very different than the sequels. And in some ways, I can appreciate that. First of all, I appreciate the fact that it's very serious and it made it very suspenseful. And also, it has a great cast, probably the best cast of the franchise. But still, compared to some of the sequels, kind of tame. And for me, some of some of the moments in the movie kind of got a little bit slow. I don't know, it kind of did. I'm not really honestly sure if it. I really wouldn't say that it dragged. It was just a couple of scenes in the film kind of felt a little slow. And but I could still enjoy it. There's honestly no big problems for me. Other than compared to the sequel, it's a very tame film. But I do see why. It's meant to be looked at as a thriller, a very straightforward horror thriller. And honestly, I think it's a really well made horror thriller. But it's just weird talking about the first Wrong Turn because I do enjoy it. I think it's really well made. But it's a very different film. It's much more of a thriller. And, compared to Wrong Turn 2, which, and like I said, this one's much more straightforward action. Well, this one is. This one's much more straightforward action and thrills. While this movie still has the action, and it still has the thrills, but you also throw in some really crazy moments, really crazy gore effects, really crazy death scenes, and you throw in and you throw in the idea of, taking place during the apocalypse. You got this one chick on the back here, right there. That chick right there, she's pretty hot. So you got, naked chicks in the film. I mean, it's a very fun sequel. And this one's much more serious. It's got a very sinister tone to it. And I can respect that. But it's kind of weird because it's just a very straightforward thriller. And compared to the sequels, which I thought was a little bit better with Wrong Turn 2, is that it had the thrills and it had the action, but it also had the gore. But anyways, the story is about the character Chris Flip, Desmond Harrington. I think he's studying to become a doctor, I believe. Actually, he was driving his car for a job interview. And while he's driving, he drives by sort of the old man character from the second movie and from Wrong Turn 5, which is played by Doug Bradley. And of course, he tells him that, he doesn't have a phone. And then Desmond Harrington drives away, and he's driving to the woods, and he hits this car, and you find out that Eliza Dushku, or Jessie, and her friends were in this car when it got hit. And pretty much the Jessie character and a couple other characters, they pretty much, the Chris, Jessie, Carly, and Scott characters, they're going to go walk off into the woods to look for help. And they leave two teens behind. One ends up disappearing, and she finds, I don't know if she finds blood or if she finds something like that. I think she finds blood or something like that. And you got a pretty decent death scene where, one of the mutants takes barbed wire and pulls it back through her mouth and it pulls it back into her head. Okay, it's pretty gory. And pretty much from there on, and even at the beginning of the film, you have a pretty memorable scene where there's these rock climbers, and this one guy you hear him scream, and then he gets thrown off the cliff, and then the girl, I think she's even running, and she gets hit by barbed wire in the woods, and she ends up dying. So it's a pretty good opening to the film in the beginning of the movie. But pretty much the Desmond Harrington, Eliza Dushku, basically the Chris, Jessie, Carly, and Scott characters, they go and find this cabin. And when they go in there, they find body parts, they find tools, bloody knives, body parts in refrigerators, and there are these three mutant hillbillies living back in the woods. One is called Sawtooth. I think it's Sawtooth or Sawteeth. I think it was Sawtooth. One Eye and Three Finger. And these three hillbillies show up, and while they're in the house, everybody hides. And you sort of get this really good scene where you're not really seeing it, but you're hearing bodies getting chopped to pieces. Very suspenseful. And you got a good shot where it's through the keyhole. It's through a keyhole, and you're seeing somebody look through a keyhole. Pretty suspenseful stuff. And then it becomes a chase movie where the hillbillies, they fall asleep, they try to sneak out of the house, they end up waking up. The hillbillies end up waking up, and the rest of the film is pretty much these characters getting chased in the woods by these hillbillies and getting, kind of knocked off one by one. The Scott character ends up being shot by arrows to the chest. The Carly character ends up, you get that great scene in the fire tower, I think, basically in this watchtower, and they go up to look for this radio, and while they're in there, the watchtower catches on fire, and they get that great scene where they're trying to get out, and you get that really, really good shot. Rob Schmidt did a great job with this shot. It was so good, where you see from the Carly character's eyes, you see her pupils, sort of, not dialect, but her pupils as if she was dead. And I think it was dialect, whatever. But her pupils, it goes like that to where she's dead. And the shot zooms out, and there's an axe right here, and it cuts all this, and you just see the body drop and fall, and then the head just drops off. It's an amazing shot. And then pretty much it comes down to the Chris and Jesse character. They try to get help, and the Chris character, he ends up finding a police officer, and that police officer ends up getting shot in the head with an arrow. And you got a quick chase scene, and I think Eliza Dushku, I think she gets she's still with Chris or she gets taken by the hillbillies. I can't remember. But I know that Chris goes back to the cabin, and him and Jesse, Chris and Jesse, end up fighting these hillbillies, end up killing them all off and fighting everything they got. And then the movie ends with Three Finger still being alive, and of course that would be in The Wrong Turn 2. Dead end. But Wrong Turn, it's a very straightforward film. It's not long at all. Besides a couple moments that kind of dragged. For instance, there's a lot of scenes where they're walking in the woods, or even the beginning. It mainly for me was the beginning of the film. Where I get it, you're building characters, but I don't know, something about it, it's like it went on a long time. It's mainly them walking to the woods. You don't really see the hillbillies too much, and then they get to the cabin, and you finally see the hillbillies. Which I do get. It was a slow build, but I don't know. It was a little slow to start up, but it wasn't dragging that much. It was just a little slow. It was a little bit of a slow start up. But the movie is extremely straightforward. It's got a lot of action, a lot of great scenes, a lot of great shots. Very well directed by Rob Schmidt. And he wouldn't go on to make. He'd only go on to make one more movie. I mean, he made a couple other movies, but he also would go on to make The Alphabet Killer. But he really wouldn't make anything else after that. I don't believe he did, anyways. But he did a good job making this movie. I mean, it's very well shot, captured the atmosphere very well. It's a film that you can tell had a big budget. Not really a huge budget, but, it had a budget behind it. Really, really great shots. Really good camera work. A lot of good scenes involving, action and thrills. A lot of good practical effects. Although it's not as gory as some of the sequels, but it's still got some pretty good practical effects. And the first Wrong Turn, I feel like it's pretty decent. It's pretty good. I will honestly say this is probably my second favorite of the franchise. So I still enjoy it. It's still one of my favorite ones in the franchise. It's just not a movie that it's not my favorite. I enjoyed Wrong Turn 2 more. It's much more of a straightforward thriller, an action horror thriller. And then the second movie is a straight up slasher film with a lot of crazy death scenes, a lot of crazy gore. But the first Wrong Turn, pretty good, pretty decent. I enjoyed it. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching my review on Wrong Turn, and I hope you guys enjoyed the review. And later on, throughout the week, I'll be talking about the sequels. Like, I might talk about Wrong Turn 2 later on tonight. I'm not sure. It depends on if I get enough time to talk about Wrong Turn 2. But I'll be talking about Wrong Turn 2 a little bit later on tonight, probably, or tomorrow. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching my review on Wrong Turn. And I'll see you guys on the next review. Bye, guys.